Hi, my name is Henry Reinga, and I'm asking this question today. Why do many church plants fail? This morning at breakfast, a man who is participating in two church plants, both of them failures, basically had this story, and I've heard the story again and again. He said, we had a high funding model, but high expectations. We raised a lot of money. We paid a church planter for 3 years. We never had enough available money to even buy certain things. Sometimes we even ran out of toilet paper because so much money was poured into salaries. Again, this is his story. It seemed like we had a lack of knowledge. We spent this money, but we didn't know the effective way to get that money spent so we get to critical mass. There was lack of unity. We had a lot of conflict. There was lack of critical mass. We just could not get big enough quickly enough to pay our bills. And there was a lack of leaders. We had 80 people coming, but we had so few leaders, and the leaders were burning out. And there was, in the end of the day, lack of money. We just couldn't pay our bills. So after 3 years, a courageous try, even though 80 people were coming, most of them unchurched, we had to close the church. And he said this happened once and it happened again. So I asked him, hey, do you want to plant another church? And he said, no way. I did not want to plant another church. It was a burnout fest. In other words, he was saying, I'm too burned out to even think about planting another church. So in this model of high funding and high expectations, if it doesn't occur, many people feel very frustrated or bitter about church planting. It doesn't have to be that way. The New Testament expectation of church planting was smaller, more home-based. It was a called bivocational model. In other words, leaders were called to just plant a church out of the fullness of their life. The Apostle Paul, for instance, was a tent maker. Some of his friends, Priscilla and Aquila, were tent makers. Philemon, they had a church with his wife Apphia, and he was a businessman. But the model was bivocational, and there wasn't an expectation that anyone would ever get paid. Now, Paul said, hey, it is a right to be paid. If someone receives a salary for the gospel, how wonderful is that? So a church plant could turn into a vocational model, but it doesn't have to be. The operating system says a church can be planted by lay people, and lay people can be ordained. And the ordinations in the early church were decentralized ordinations. Leaders would go into communities, they would disciple leaders, and they would become ordained. And these ordained leaders became church planters. The fact was, it was easy to plant new churches because critical mass was not so important. The man I met with this morning talked much about critical mass. We just couldn't get to critical mass. We just couldn't make it there. We just couldn't keep the thing going, and we burned out. You have a great opportunity, potentially, if you are called to be a church planter, because at Christian Leaders Institute, we offer free church planter training. You'll get the key training you need, starting with a Getting Started class that deals with basic doctrine and other issues. There's some church and ministry training, some preaching training, some people smart training, and a theory class that talks about the theory of church planting. And then when you're ready, there is an action class by which you actually start planting your church and proceed toward ordination if you need ordination. Also, there's a connection to the Christian Leaders Alliance. So I don't know where you're at, but this opportunity is presented to you. You can get that training free of charge. You don't have to quit your job. You can go forward if that's something the Holy Spirit has placed in your heart. You can be a church planter. Is God calling you to be a church planter? We will do what we can to take away any barriers in your training, and we'll bring the process for your ordination, and we'll also connect you to the Christian Leaders Alliance. So, what about you? Are you called to be a church planter? And if you are, take that next step and sign up for this training. If you're already at Christian Leaders Institute, look at these classes and ask yourself, am I called to be a church planter? I want to welcome anyone and everyone called by God for this incredible opportunity to proclaim the gospel worldwide.